Oke, terima kasih Saksan. Saya kira menarik sekali ya, jadi banyak proyek-proyek yang menunjukkan engagement Saksan dengan kotanya dan dengan berbagai upaya untuk memperoleh hal-hal yang barangkali kalau secara normal tidak bisa diperoleh. Banyak berantem. Masih ada bertanya? Satu, Asep, sebelah kiri ada pertanyaan? Oke, satu dulu ya, silakan.
Thank you for your presentation. Very interesting. My name is Asep. I'm a master's student here in ITB. I'm wondering, because most of your project involves participation of the local villagers, some volunteers. I'm wondering, how do you ensure your security or the integrity of the structure that you build, and how you ensure that it's safe? The safety of the structure, because most of them is, let's say they are not a skilled labor. They are that you mentioned it was first time for them to pour concrete, something like that. How you ensure the safety? Thank you.
Okay, I guess your question probably relates to some of the bigger buildings like the double flood relief house that we did, right? In those projects, we actually have master builders with us. So we have 3 master builders actually. I work with an organization called Epic Homes. You can Google them. They build a lot of houses for the Orang Aslis. So they have already worked out a system. I mean, the structure itself is all prefabricated, steel structures. The assembly is done by the volunteers. But we also have 3 or 4 master builders as well as a lot of architects that actually supervises it and check some of the jointings and things like that. So, but then after saying that, if you look at some of my structures which I built for myself, it never complies to engineering standards or whatever, because I felt that we in this part of the world, we are not like Europe or we are not like Australia or Japan. We live in a third world environment where we do not have so much resources, and therefore we cannot build like the Americans or the Europeans. We have to find new ways of actually looking at safety. If you look at the Orang Aslis, for example, in my country, they live in small bamboo houses. They live out like some of the one in Papua New Guinea, 30-40 meters up the trees, in basic buildings with no handrails. So what I'm trying to say is that we need a kind of a middle ground to meet between our standards and what the European standards are. And in that middle ground, I think there needs to be a lot of common sense. My own buildings has got no railings, and the structures are all very, very minimal. But like my office, for example, it's now 15 years old already. When it was built, a lot of people told me that it's going to fall over, but it hasn't fallen over. So I guess we have to kind of find that common sense and use that type of intelligence to do buildings. Like, I mean, the children home, for example, the concrete, I mean, we have engineers to check the concrete and things like that, but we see the rebars are being exposed and they'll get corroded in the long run. So do we tear it? In normal situation, we will tear it down and make good. So we have to find some compromise in that sense.
Oke, ada lagi? Mungkin ya. 1, saya buka untuk 2, 3. Oke, baik, 3 dulu ya. Silakan. Oh, sorry. Ya.
Okay, my name is Nur Latifa from master student in ITB. So I would like to ask, about based on your experience, is there any other option or any other things that can connect different communities from like your last project, any other than bridges? Thank you. Like, is there any other things or other options that can connect the diversity of the communities, like Chinese and Indians and Malays, other than bridges? Thanks.
Okay. I guess that every project would probably have its own context. Yeah, we have to find that context about how we can be able to build bridges, metaphorical bridges, where we try to unite people and bridge people rather than try to divide them. Your question is whether are there any other ways? Yes, there is many other ways. It is not in the physical construction that we bridge people, but actually it's in the relationship of working together, especially in gotong royongs. So if you see some of our, like kebun bangsa, I could have built the whole kebun bangsa without any volunteers. Because we have financial grants, I can actually employ professional gardeners. And actually most of it is built by professional gardeners. But we still have to run a lot of gotong royongs every 2 weeks. And the gotong royong idea is about bringing people together. People from all different races, from all different age groups, from young people to very old people. And when we come together, we are building that bridge also, that metaphorical bridge, bridging that understanding, that trust, and to showcase the goodness of people rather than the bad stuff, bad side of people. So I think that is probably more important than the physical structure that we are building. The physical structure is just an excuse for us to bring those people together.
Okay.
Hi. Thanks for the interest in the slides that you presented. My question is, how many are there in your team? Do you have always the same team? Always the same team. So how you organize the volunteers? Because I guess the volunteers will be different.
Okay, I think the question is two. One is my office team. My office team has always been between 10 to 12% for the last 15 years. If you see section design in SD2, we are landscape architects. I have decided not to build a very big office because...
Sorry, not about your team,
office,
but the team in this project, in your sabbatical project.
Yeah, okay.
Is it always the same team in every project?
There's a bit of overlap.
Oh.
The overlap is always there. The key activists are always there. But then in every project, there are new activists that will come in. And in the process, we hope to hand over. After we have started it, then we can hand it over to some of these newer activists to run. For example, now Kongsi KL, we started it maybe last year, but now we have some young architects who have taken over already. Yeah. So they do the curating, they run all the programs, and they do all the physical work. Yeah.
So it means like the whole of your lab goes for sabbatical. Okay. And my next question is how you keep the team spirit alive and also the spirit of your volunteers, because I guess it would be a really huge effort to do that. Thank you.
Yeah. I'm probably a very new person in regard to this, so I'm not that experienced actually as a community organizer. I do a lot of these things because it's related to my work, which is landscape architecture and design. So I don't know whether I can actually answer that question compared to some of my other friends who are actual social organizers and they work with the community for many years. There will be a lot of problems. There are always problems when we work with people. But we are all guided by this one principle, that there is goodness in people. and we need to bring that goodness out. And it is about no longer about you or me, but it is a lot of our time is about trying to solve some problems or bigger problems. So, like for example, an example is when we grow vegetables, right? If you grow vegetables, after a long run, there will be problem. Who is going to take more? Who's going to take less? Who works more? Who contribute less? Whatever, and then we start to become very calculative. But when we say, okay, let's not even take anything, let's give it all to the soup kitchen, then we have taken that problem out. And it doesn't matter if I contribute more, or I pay more, or I work less, it doesn't really matter anymore. So I guess that probably partly helps when we are working with big groups of people, with coming in from very different philosophy in life and attitudes and baggages and stuff like that. But my main thing is that actually when I work with many people, right, I can only see goodness of people. It's about just, you just overlook any other problems that sometimes we face, especially when on the keyboard, on social media, the badness of us all come out. Because when they just talk, I think that's not enough. We must do. So the emphasis is about doing, and in the doing, I think the goodness of people will come out. When we talk, we become very, very bitchy. But I think on this project, the idea also is to try to find solutions for architects like this. I have a lot of young architect students who are very disillusioned with our profession. They think that architecture has reached its end. It's on its deathbed. There's no longer any relevance to architecture anymore. We are just doing decoration and objects and building that doesn't solve any problems. So a lot of young architects are beginning to question, is this the thing which I want to go into for the rest of my life? And I think that is also a question I am asking myself. After working, I've been working for 30 years as a landscape architect. So I've got a lot of frustration doing work, especially for governments. And in the process, I also get very disillusioned. Why am I doing this? What difference does this make? And then I look at my portfolio. My God, it's all elite, upmarket condominiums and hotels and whatever. Is this what landscape architecture is all about? I guess all of us will ask questions like that in the process of our life. And then we begin to look at, okay, who feeds us? I mean, in order for us to operate as architects, we need to be funded by a patron. Michelangelo has his patron for him to pay and do sculpture. Today, our patrons are big government who will give us big jobs, hotel owners that will give us hotel to design, condominium developers that will give us all these big buildings to landscape and design. And apart from that, if you ask me, there's very little else. In Malaysia, I don't know about Indonesia. All of us are paid by all these guys. So then about 2 or 3 years ago, I visited Taiwan. I visited this architect called Huang Shenyuan. I don't know whether you guys have heard about him. You Google him. His office is called Field Office. It's based in Yilan. He was a very big architect, graduated from America, worked in America. But when he came back to Taiwan, he located himself in this small little village in a town which is about an hour away from Taipei called Yilan. And he started to design his own town, hometown. He built a huge model of his city using his volunteers and his architects, and he becomes like the de facto mayor of the whole town, where he knows every single thing, the drain, that warehouse, that street, that junction or whatever, and he's got some ideas and he will put them into plans or into his model, and then he will start to approach different developers or maybe patrons or use social media to get bits of things like that built. When I met him, I was very inspired by that. He gave me a solution that as architects, we can actually find our own patrons and we can find our own source of funding. So I think some of the work that I do is actually an extension of what he is doing in Taiwan. So now with crowdsourcing of money and with all this Indiegogo or whatever, if you have a good idea, you can actually get it built. You don't really need a developer. So that's the type of hope that I hope to instill in young people, young architects or whatever, that if you don't feel like you like to work with a big corporate architects and whatever, you can also find other ways of helping yourself. In a creative city like Bandung, I think Bandung is the best place to do things like that now. We are all looking at, the whole Asia is looking at Bandung, okay? So if we start to do all this, we can start to compare notes and start to maybe reclaim back our profession. And don't let this beautiful profession die a natural death. I talked to some of my old architects at Jimmy Lim. They are totally disillusioned. When my son wants to study architecture, he told my son, forget it. Don't study architecture. So I need to reverse that, and we all need to reverse that and try to give some hope back to our young architects.
Tadi ada yang bilang, silakan.
Jadi selamat sore, saya Deka. Saya mau nanya, jadi arsitektur lanskap sama arsitektur itu kan aslinya dua hal yang sebenarnya bisa dibilang lebih fisik kan. Kita butuh program yang lebih fisik untuk menjalankannya. Nah, tapi dari arsitektur dan arsitektur lanskap itu sebenarnya yang mana yang lebih mudah, lebih dekat sama masyarakat, yang lebih mudah diterima, yang lebih dulu seharusnya memberi efek ke masyarakat itu yang arsitektur atau yang arsitektur lanskap? Kecenderungannya seperti apa setelah proyek-proyek yang telah Bapak kerjakan?
Let's ask about whether architecture or master architecture has some more direct influence on society.
Okay, yeah. No, I tell you what, architecture in the past was called the mother of the arts because it's so encompassing, it's so big, and it affects cities and whatever. But if you ask me, I think landscape architecture might be the future mother of the arts. You know why? Because I think architecture has stopped teaching about holistic design. You know what holistic design is? It's when you do design, it's actually all-encompassing. It's hydrology, it's engineering, it's design, it's graphics, it's lighting, it's whatever. Resource management, climatology, whatever, hydrology. But I think architecture is starting to compartmentalize in recent times. That you are only like building buildings and designing car parks and satisfying local authority requirements and stuff like that. I don't know, when I go for crits, all the kids are talking about things like that. They are no longer thinking very holistically. Yeah. I think landscape architecture has a better chance of that holistic thinking is because I think landscape architecture comes from agriculture, from geography. So when we look at geography and agriculture and things like that, and I know in my school where I learned landscape architecture in New Zealand, that word holistic is always used throughout our course of our course. I don't know how that word whether creeps into the conversation at all. in modern landscape, in modern architectural teaching. So I think maybe it's not about whether architecture will survive or landscape architecture will survive. I think people like Woha in Singapore, they are talking about biophilic design. I think when you talk about biophilic design, you are talking about that holistic ecosystem again already. Yeah, you're talking about weather, you're talking about insects, birds, things like that. So when we start to think like that, I think there's a better chance that architecture can survive the future. You know what I mean?
Should I get up? Okay, how is it? Ya, kita dengan ya, biasa masih practical. What more? Hello, my name Adi. I want to ask. Thank you for your presentation, and I have 3 questions. Sorry, it's rather personal. Why do you take your personal sabbatical time? And can you tell more about that? And number 2, in your office always open the design and open source design. But why do you take that decision? And then are in this the third question is, did you inspired by anarchist value or something, because you always do project without the permission from authority and do open source design?
Okay, 3 questions I got from you. First is, what do I do? Where do I go during my sabbatical?
Yes.
Number 2, open source. What's my thought on the open source architecture? The third is inspiration. Is it where I get inspiration? Yeah?
Or anarchist value or something? Or
Huh?
anarchist or
Anarchist. Okay.
because you do this without permission from
Yeah.
authority.
Where do I come from? Okay, fine. Okay, you answer 3 questions. This will take half an hour. Okay. Most people, when they do sabbatical, they go to a university to further study. I'm not an academic guy. I don't teach. I don't even believe in a lot of talks and stuff like that. So when I did my sabbatical, no, it was just about leaving my office, leaving commercial work, and just sitting at home doing nothing. Not going to an office. Sometimes I sleep a lot. Sleeping is important. That's where you start to dream. Okay? But no, my sabbatical is about trying to do stuff which I have not done before. That means moving out from the comfort zone. My comfort zone is landscape architecture. If you ask me to do landscape, it's very, very easy. But you ask me to go and organize people and things like that, it's very, very difficult. But I believe that at any one time, all of us should always be moving out from our comfort zone, because after we start to repeat doing things a few times, it gets to become boring anyway, and then it becomes very easy. And when it becomes easy, you should start to be very uneasy about it. Something which, as young architects, you should. So try to do. For me, sabbatical is about doing things which I have not done before. So it's about experimenting, things like that. But things like that also for me, is research and development for my office. Because it gives me so much contact, it gives me so much experience, that I find that today when I speak to my client, right, I got so much more things I can tell them, and so much different ways we can do projects. from convention. And most of the time, because it comes with solid experience, they will actually buy it. For example, now I'm actually building a very big park in Kuala Lumpur. It's called the Tugu Park. It's like the central park of Kuala Lumpur. And conventionally, when we design a park, we will just design it and we will get a contractor to build it. Just like KLCC Park, it's get built. But in this particular park, because we wanted to put this park into the public trust, we want the public to own this park. And we therefore need to build in ownership by everybody in Kuala Lumpur to tell them that this is your park. This is not a park that I built and I give you. So we are building in a lot of mass participation in the actual construction of the park. Gotong royong, planting flowers, building footpaths, building forest trails, things like that. So it is not, those things that I do in my sabbatical is not totally detached from what I'm doing as a professional. It's adding onto it. So that's what I mean. So that's first question. Second question is open sourcing. Yeah, I totally believe in open sourcing of anything, including this thing that we use every day, because I've been looking at this thing, and this is really representative of what our civilization is all about now. And I think open source is going to win. When those people who try to patent and try to copyright and try to keep information to themselves. Because if you go to Shenzhen in China now, where everything is open source, the amount of creativity is so much higher than even Silicon Valley, if you ask me. Because people are willing to share. Okay, I'm an expert on plastic. Okay, I can develop this plastic casing for you. You are the expert on software. And when we start to put all these things together, we will make a better handphone than Apple, who is sitting there trying to protect their stupid design. Okay? So for architecture, it's the same thing. I think if we are talking about solving big human problems, because architects, we are building in the cities, we are supposed to solve big problems in regards to human civilization in our built environment. If we start to protect our ideas, this is mine, you cannot copy, there will be so much self-censorship within our community that any idea would not flourish or will take a much longer time to flourish. So we must share ideas. If I'm giving you my open source drawing, right, because in my website, 10 projects are open source. All the construction drawings are there. A lot of people were horrified why I did that. But my logic is that, hello, if you want to copy projects which are done 6 years ago, it is already 6 years out of date, okay? Today, what is in here, you don't know, okay? Because that is how fast I think our mind should need to be changing. If I am repeating this detailing of my design 6 years ago, I am stagnant. I am not progressing. So don't worry about open, that's why I'm saying don't worry about open sourcing. Whenever you have something designed, put it out. That design probably has been conceptualized by you at least for architects 3 years. Because it takes that long to build things. That is a 3-year-old idea already. So why are we so worried about other people copying our ideas? And that is my big gripe and probably big disagreement with some of my fellow architects in Malaysia. Some of them have become my biggest critic today. It's partly because of some of these things that we are trying to put on. We need to help each other, especially the young ones. We need to give them the resources to leapfrog them into better architects. I believe that. I don't believe in the old Chinese Kung Fu master, always keep back a few tactics so that the students are not as good as them. I totally don't believe in that. That is when Kung Fu will die. A tradition will die. Because after every generation there will be less and less and less knowledge. I want the next generation to have much bigger knowledge than me. And I can benefit from that too. I think that should be the kind of abundant mentality that we need to cultivate among ourselves as architects. Because whatever we do impacts society. We are not some accountant, I don't know what accountants are. the stuff that we build impacts society. People live in our building, people live in our public spaces. And then the third question is inspiration. Who inspired me? Okay, my journey. Yeah, when I was a young landscape architect, my biggest guru was Martha Schwartz. She's a landscape architect. She's a fine artist turned landscape architect. So she treats her landscape almost like a canvas. And she used very unconventional material like plastics, frogs, bagels to compose her landscape. We would be using plants and flowers and trees. She is using frogs and she's using donuts and stuff like that to make landscape. So that one actually exploded in my mind when I saw her work in the early 90s. And a lot of my early works were taking that type of form. Very shocking, very colorful, using a lot of collaboration with artists and things like that. But then later in life, as we start to move on, we look back on some of this project. We find that some of this shocking landscape that we do are very, it's almost like performance art. It's not timeless. It has got a very short lifespan. And we felt that landscape architecture should have such short shelf life, relevance. So then we start to look at other guru. Of course, my other big inspiration comes from my traveling, especially to Indonesia. I did a major trip with some of Apep's contemporary, Tamrin, Marina Borhan. So we went to Nias, we went to Sumatra, Medan, Sulawesi, Bali, Kalimantan. And when I saw some of the traditional buildings in this part of the world, where they are the building remains the same for almost 1,000 years, it begins to inform some of the work that we do. Use local materials. Don't see the building as a permanent structure. It's a temporary structure. So don't be so anal about it. Allowing time to finish the building and things like that. So all this philosophy comes from traveling in this part of the world. And of course, our guru at that time was Jeffrey Bauer. Jeffrey Bauer, who does a lot of work in Bali also, and of course in Sri Lanka. So when we look at his building, he's using light quality. He's absolutely forced to use local material. I think if he's given a choice, he might not use local material. But in Sri Lanka at that time, the government during the war in Sri Lanka does not allow imported material into Sri Lanka. So he was forced to use local material. And we saw how beautiful he can use local material like color cement, concrete, steel, or whatever. So those type of work informs some of the work that we are doing now, which is about championing that timelessness of design and also appreciating that Asian value of imperfection. I'll talk about it more about tomorrow. I think the whole idea about imperfection becomes a philosophy in our design. It's a very opposing philosophy compared to other more Western culture, which sees perfection as the strive of design, that design must be perfect. Whereas for us here, we are a bit chin-chai, relax, forgiving, give and take, in fact, I hope I answered that first question, please.
Oke, saya kira waktu juga pas nantinya yang bernomor. So, saya kira kita sudah mendengarkan. Oke. Sepuluh menit. Dua pertanyaan. Satu, dua di belakang. Oke. Dua dulu ya.
Singkat, langsung.
Hello, my name is Steven. I'm an architecture student. Well, thank you very much for sharing your projects. It was really incredible. One of the things that I really interested about is how you approach the people, because what you do for as a landscape architecture is actually doing public projects, right? And the thing with public, a lot of people are involved in projects. And one of the projects that I saw, the thing with the river in this city, used an approach where people can actually write what they like, and it was one of the approaches. We have a project actually in one of the campus, and we use the participation, active and research approach, and which we talk a lot with the people there. But the thing is, there are still some leaders that usually plan all of the opinions, and usually they lead the opinions of the people into one opinion that actually is really subjective, which we think that it is the opinion of the people, but I think it actually is the opinion of one or two persons. Yeah, that is one of the things that I'd like to ask. And the other one is, how long do you usually take for a project? Because in my experience, it's quite a long time, because you have to approach the people, you have to build the thing, and the evaluation, and so on and so on. So that's the question. Thank you.
Okay, I'll answer your second question first. How long it takes to build some of this project? The river project took us 4 months from consultation to finish. Yeah, 4 months. The orphanage, 14 months. Kebun Bangsa, 5 years. But whatever you see constructed is only 6 months. The urban farm varies. I guess there's no timeline to it. The bridge one is taking a long time too. Then the question about how you handle different opinions of people coming together, I don't have an answer for you for that. I think I don't believe in doing everything myself, so I collaborate with a lot of other people. There are some people who are very good in human relationship. I don't know whether that's the right word. So they are a lot more patient, they are very experienced. Usually they are women, because they are very, very good in working consensus amongst people. So you have to, if your skill is not there, you have to collaborate with people who are skilled. I guess that's my only probably practical answer to you, to do that. But people having different opinion, very manipulative people in your organization, I face all that. So we try to we try to be inclusive, but we cannot allow them to dictate the direction of the project. So in other words, you have to be quite political about how you maneuver the thing and still get whatever you get done without offending people or whatever. Yeah. So my own experience on all this social organization is through my education days like you. I was in New Zealand. We were human rights activists there. We were campaigning for human rights in Asia, especially in Philippines at that time when Marcos was the dictator in Philippines. In Malaysia, we were still hanging people for communist activity. So I guess when we are organizing in that type of high-risk environment, you learn how to kind of negotiate some of these political problems. So at that time, I remember when we were organizing, we are always followed, we are always tapped, our phones are tapped. We don't have phone yet, those landline phones. Our letters are always open and things like that. So communicating is so difficult at that time. So when social media and internet burst into the scene, it's like, hallelujah! You can encrypt your email and you can send it and nobody can read it, and somebody, so technology has liberated us. To me, technology, I just see liberation in technology in social media. That's why I'm so involved in it. If you guys, you follow me, I'm a Facebook bitch actually. And Instagram bitch and whatever bitch. Because we are using a social media platform to do our work. And sometimes when we need mass participation of people, we use social media to get that mass. If you depend on certain individual leaders to go and get their followers to come, you have a problem. So I will encourage people to use social media. When you use social media, you can actually get a much broader section of society to come and help us in gotong royongs and things like that. So when Andre came, we put it out on social media. My God, it was oversubscribed. I don't know how many times we had to reject people. His talk was about 5 times bigger than this talk here. I thought I answered your question.
Ya, baik. Dan dari siapa? Oke, terima.
Thank you. My name is Imam. I'm a student here. I saw many of your projects work with community. So in your experience, what is the hardest thing to work with community and how do you overcome it? Thank you.
What is the most difficult thing working with community and how we overcome it? I really don't know how we overcome it. We are still facing a lot of problems here and there. I think working with communities is never easy. But as I say, there are people who are very good in it, and some of us are not doing so well in it. We have to collaborate. We have to use people who are very experienced in this social engagement. So you see some of the pictures that we show there. We are always working as a team. To run workshops, to run engagement meetings, town hall meetings, and when people, I can share with you the Kebun Bangsa experience. A lot of problem in that because when we engage one particular community, the leadership in the community is so against what we are doing because they think that we are coming into their neighborhood to upset the equilibrium of their neighborhood in a few ways. We are bringing in more cars. We are bringing outsiders into their neighborhood because of the farming activities. We are gentrifying the area because we're doing all these cool projects that's going to raise the property price of the surrounding, and the people who are there will next be forced out because when property price goes up, people will start buying and the poor people can't afford the rental, whatever. They will come up with all this argument against us. And then we have town hall meetings. I remember one town hall meetings where I nearly went into depression because it was as big as this and everybody was shouting at us. They were almost wanting to throw chairs at us. Because they were misinformed by their leaders. To me, they are misinformed. And after the meeting, there's one friend of mine, his wife came up to my face and said, "Seksa, you are a fucking coward." Because you never defend your ideas. Because I just kept quiet because the amount of objection was so great that I didn't want to agree anymore. I just kept quiet. I didn't answer some of the questions or whatever. So I think those are the experience in which I think when we work with community, things like this will happen. And it's very, very real. And today, I am so glad I kept quiet that day. That I didn't argue. I didn't try to, be very agitated or whatever. I just sucked it in. I just went home, I slept, and I didn't wake up for almost 3 days. So those are the type of trauma that sometimes when we work in communities we get. And you have to take it. But the main thing is the perseverance. If you think that what we are doing right, you will keep doing it. So after that thing, we fall back. My funders left me. I got people who actually wanting to contribute money to fund our Kebun project. They left because they say your project too controversial. We don't want to fund you anymore. I got my volunteers. Some of them are very young people. They cannot take that type of heat. They left. So I'm left with a smaller, much smaller group. We regroup. We kept quiet for almost about 8 or 9 months. And then after that, we have to reactivate ourselves. I told them we cannot let people like that win the argument. So we have to regroup, reorganize. So we have went to another neighborhood, but this time we are a lot more quieter. We didn't use social media to talk. We approach individuals from house to house, and then we gather them into a meeting like that. We brought the local authority along with us, and we talked again. And we quietly got the agreement, and we quietly start. So now the Kebun Bangsa has started for 6 months. There is mass acceptance now, even from the community that objected to it before. Because before that, they were just hearing things and imagining things, but when they see actual construction on site, we are not that bad. We don't generate traffic problem. We are responsible. We don't contribute slope failure. There's another argument that they put out. We don't really gentrify the area that much. So it's about being persistent with the work that we do in community. It's never easy, I can tell you that. Macam-macam orang ada in our society. And there is a lot of naysayers now, especially on social media. You will see naysayers everywhere. Whatever you do is not correct. So if you give in to them, our society will regress. So if you think that things are right, we must slowly get it done. Hope I answer your question.
Okay, sudah habis ya? Oke, kalau gitu saya kira ini lumayan. Kita sudah mendengarkan banyak diskusi ya banyak, dan mendengarkan banyak insight dan revelation dari Pak Seksan mengenai pengalamannya yang menurut saya sangat menarik dan bermanfaat buat kita untuk memberikan sedikit gambaran bagaimana persoalan yang dihadapi seorang landscape architect, aktivis untuk membuat sesuatu yang melibatkan masyarakat. Tapi ada satu hal sebenarnya yang saya setuju karena I've been thinking about what is the thinking too about the role of landscape architect in the future. I agree with you. I've been thinking about it. Karena menurut saya landscape architect adalah masa depan. Buat keyakinan saya. Arsitektur hanya background. Di masa depan persoalan lingkungan yang berat dan sebagainya, landscape architecture dan pendekatan yang lebih holistik, hydrology dan lain-lain itu akan mempunyai peran yang lebih besar menurut saya. Saya setuju dengan tadi statement yang disampaikan oleh Seksan. Tapi jangan kecil hati ambil master architecture teruskan aja sampai selesai ya. Jangan pindah ke lanskap. Tapi menurut saya approach ini atau mindset ini perlu untuk dipikirkan untuk bagaimana kita sebagai arsitek juga kembali berpikir secara lebih holistik. Saya kira itu dan again, thank you so much Seksan for sharing with us today. Thank you. Dan sebelum Pak Andri menyampaikan sesuatu buat Pak Seksan, saya juga ingin menyampaikan, saya atas nama Kuliah Arsitektur menyampaikan terima kasih buat anak Batak, Pak Brian, yang ada di belakang di Wajib, yang sudah memungkinkan kegiatan yang berlangsung. Terima kasih banyak.